Well, hi guys. Coach Jerry here at the Protocol Strength and Conditioning in Tucson, Arizona, and welcome to the whiteboard. Today, I'd like to talk to you guys about how to build good strength training habits. Now, as we're getting started, I want to be clear. These are strength training habits. This is not bodybuilding, and this is not the subject of hypertrophy. I'm about 5'6". I weigh somewhere in the high 140s. Needless to say, I'm the very last person that you guys want to follow on YouTube if you're looking to get huge. I'm not the guy. So with that caveat out of the way, let's talk a little bit about strength training. All of the magic in your strength training is going to happen between 65 and 85% of your maximum effort. This tends to fly in the face of conventional wisdom. Everybody has their opinions on this. Some places are all about, going as hard as you can and PR Fridays and all that stuff. Thing is, if you want to be able to strength train and get stronger for many, many years and not get injured, that is not where the magic is happening. Those really, really top-end sets are not where you are building strength. The strength magic happens between 65 and 85%. If you were to start at a particular weight and a particular lift, and let's say that that weight was on a scale of 1 to 10, about a 6 heavy. And then the following week you did a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and you found an effort that you thought was maybe, about an 8.5 out of 10 heavy. And you stopped instead of continuing to push it. And you recycle a new program. And you take about 60 to 70% of that, and you start the journey over again. And you do a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And you do this over the course of, several weeks of training. This could be, if you're a beginner, it could be a 4 to 6 week cycle. If you're a more advanced lifter, it could be more. But you'll get to another peak, and your 8.5 out of 10 effort is going to be a higher peak. And then what you do after that, you go for a PR? Not necessarily. You start over at about 70% of that number. And you go up, and you go up, and you find a new peak. And then on the next program, you start over, about 70% of that. And what you're seeing here of what I'm drawing, this is basically a brief summary of the last several decades of my own training career. I work up to something that's reasonably heavy. I back off to 70%, and I start over again. And I do this I've been at it for a number of decades now, and you should as well. And here's the thing. Everybody has this style of cycling in their training, whether they want to or not, even the gym bros. Because you see, gym bros, they start with a weight that they can lift, and they do more and more and more and more, and they get injured, and then they start over again, and they do more and more and more, and they get injured, and start over again, and more, and get injured, and you see everybody has this cycle in their training. The only difference is the gym bros never make any progress. Their lines are flat. This line has that upward trajectory. The important thing to note here is that the next step off a peak is always down. That's how my mentor Mark Rifkin used to always say it. The next step off a peak is always down. You can either step back or you can jump off. I recommend not jumping off. So in that case, let's just go ahead and erase this one because we don't want to train like that. This chart that I've drawn here puts your training into a state that we call flow. This is a flow state. And this is a really, really awesome place to train. You get stronger year after year after year after year. And it turns out folks who train like this tend to not get bored with their training because they're always getting stronger. The Protocol Strength and Conditioning is a very small community. We are serving less than 100 people right now. And fun fact, I need 3 hands to count the number of people who have been here for more than 10 years. So if you want to play the long game like we do, this is that flow state that you're after. So how do I pick my weights? Anything below this flow state is boredom. It's just not fun because the weights are too light and they're not giving you the intended results. Anything above this state is anxiety-inducing. So you want to pick weights that are heavy enough to where they get your attention, but they're not so heavy that you're scared to do it. There's this very, very happy place that happens in training. So a lot of people might ask us, like, okay, if I'm a beginner in strength training, how do I know what's a 10? I mean, how do I know what's a 10 out of 10 heavy if I never experience what a 10 really feels like? That's actually a really good point, because a lot of folks, especially beginners, have no idea what a 5 out of 10 or what a 10 out of 10 does. So we have a second little nifty chart that I'm going to show to you right now. So what we have here is a chart that helps sort some of that out. So on the left side here, I know the camera got a little bit of a glare here, but what we've got is PRE, which is perceived rate of exertion. And on this side, we have something different that we'll talk about in just a second. So what I have here on the perceived rate of exertion is we have a 10, a 9.5, 9, 8.5, so on and so forth down the row here. And this is, so something that's like a 1 to 4 hard, that would be something like a warm-up set. And then you have, a 5 or a 6, 7, and so on and so forth. Now, again, with beginners, they're going to have a tough time figuring out like what is really a 10 or what is really an 8. So over here we have reps in reserve, which I think for a beginner is a much, much better way to gauge how heavy a weight is for you. So 1 to 4, it's actually hard to gauge how many reps in reserve is just because it's so light. If you're training at something that's about a 5 or 6 heavy, over here we have about 4 to 6 reps in reserve. So what that means is when you're finished with your set, you could have done 4 to 6 more. Again, in my opinion, this is sometimes a little hard to suss out, because if you could have really done that many more sets, or I'm sorry, that many more reps, it could have actually been hard to gauge. The place that we really want to look at here is once we get into the 7s through 9s. So if something is like a 7 out of 10 heavy, it means you could have done about 3 or 4 reps. If something is an 8 out of 10 heavy, it means you only could have done maybe 2 more. Once you start getting past the 8.5 and into the 9, the 90% is really the absolute peak of where we want to be going, which means we could have done 1 more rep. Being able to do 1 more rep at the end of any set that you're working with, regardless of how heavy it is an awesome way to never get injured in your training. Once you start getting into the 9.5s and the 10s, you can see here the reps in reserve is at 0, meaning, and usually you can tell very easily that this weight that I did, like you could see how that last rep that I'm cranking out maybe was started to slow down, maybe form might have broken down a little bit. This is not a great place to be unless you're on a powerlifting platform and there's a judge in front of you and there's a trophy on the line. All of your training should be hanging out in this area where you always got a rep or 2 left in the tank. And most of our students find that this reps in reserve analogy actually works a little bit better than the perceived rate of exertion. So what are some of the advantages? Well, the first obvious advantage is you will continue to get stronger training like this. It's a very, very easy way to continue to make progress for years and years and years. The second thing is, if you've always got reps in the tank, the likelihood of you getting injured, virtually 0. So I wanted to make this video short. I think that's about all. I'll go ahead and call it here for today, but I wanted to share this tidbit with you guys. If you're training in a way that is very, very different from this, I would encourage you to reevaluate how you do that. If you need help designing training programs, we are certainly available here. Just reach out to us at the information below in the video or at theprotocolsc.com. Thanks for watching.